Coming to you from sunny South Carolina, it's the Palmetto Conservative Show with your host, Jim Lee. From the upstate to the low country, from the coast to Columbia, we'll cover what's right and uncover what's wrong in the Palmetto State. If we see it, we say it. We call it like it is in South Carolina. And now, it's the Palmetto Conservative Show. Let's jam.
And welcome back into Hour 2 of the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the Conservative Broadcast Media Network. I'm your host, Jim Lee. Perhaps a little more tired, but definitely as snarky as I can be. And just wondering, where can we apply some common sense? And how can we pursue critical thinking in the marketplace of ideas when we have got such a dichotomy of worldviews, of political ideologies, that it seems like we cannot find common ground? Well, I think the first thing we're going to have to do in order to find common ground and move forward to find solutions is we do need to move out of the hyper-partisan nature of pretty much all of our conversations and move towards one of a more fact-based and persuasion-oriented approach. We must understand that there are those who are strident and unreachable and who will never listen to any suggested insight. And those are the people you play through. You smile, say speak to the hand, and walk on by. But there are others out there with whom we have much in common. In our communities, in our churches, where we work, where it's time we had some respectful conversation about where we are. And the very first thing that we have to do before we begin pontificating about particular solutions, before we opine about the good, the bad, and the ugly, is to first of all relate to one another. And in the course of relating to one another, I believe that it's very easy to come to the consensus, to come to agreement that there's something wrong. You know, as they say, the first step in solving a problem is first of all admitting you have one. Well, we don't have that consensus. We've got a president that believes we don't have a spending problem, a Republican House of Representatives that believes spending is the problem, and a Senate that's full of a mixed bag of people, all under the inept leadership of Harry Reid, who wouldn't know if a problem if it bit it in the nose. And they're supposed to be the deliberative body. But as we go about relating to others in our circle of influence, our sphere of influence, our circle of friends and acquaintances, times are such that it should be possible to bring a conversation around to some sort of discussion about the kinds of problems we have, not the solutions, not who's responsible for them. Let's face it, folks. There is plenty of culpability to go around. And it provides absolutely no value whatsoever to sit here and argue about whether the Republicans are 51% culpable and the Democrats are 49% culpable, or 70-30 or whatever. The fact of the matter is that it's 50-50. Or I should say, the fact of the matter is, it's 100%, 100%. They're all culpable. And the reason they're culpable is because they spend all their time and energy fighting over symptoms and arguing over noise and never getting to the nub, getting to the root cause of the problem. So wasting time on blame, wasting time on trying to propose solutions when there is not a consensus understanding, a consensus about the fact that there is a problem, and a clear definition of that problem. It is useless to try and come up with a solution. We need to be pursuing more and more of that within our own local spheres of influence. I believe that our houses of worship of all stripes need to step back and take a careful look at their involvement or lack thereof in the culture. The sad thing is that only about half of the people in our churches are actually registered to vote, and of those that are registered, only half of them bother to go. So it's less than 25% of the people who are supposedly concerned about traditional American values even bother making it to the ballot box, let alone engage in the culture and fight to defend their rights of freedom of speech and religion. So yes, I believe our churches do need to re-engage. And our political parties have got to move beyond the money and the quest for party dominance and party power, and focus more about what's best for our country. I personally believe that if the conservatives in the Republican Party would stand up strongly, not based on anything new, but stand up strongly on the values and principles espoused in the Republican Party platform, and do so in a way that is both winsome and solutions-oriented, that they will provide such a clear contrast to the alternatives being offered that they just might actually win an election or two somewhere along the way. Will it happen? I don't know. But I sure hope so, because if we don't, nothing will change. Leadership's certainly not going to come out of Washington. Continuing down the path that we started in the first hour, talking about the president's initiatives on gun violence. Were it that this were simply a focus solely on guns and on measures to reduce gun violence, this is much bigger than that. It's bigger because of the way the president has framed this, and the way in which this president has demonstrated in the past his willingness to walk over, through, around, on top of Congress and our Constitution. That he believes that he has the power to actually change one of the Bill of Rights. That he has the power to, rather than spending time working with Congress, to unilaterally go about and take this, in my view, rather sophomorish approach in appointing Joe Biden to go out and develop some proposals to deal with the gun violence problem, which leads me to the question, if the root of the gun violence is not the inanimate objects themselves, it's not the guns, it's not the bullets, it's not the legal access to obtain firearms, it's not the legal possession of firearms, the problem, it's the illegal. And so one could argue that we really have a moral problem, and yet this president believes that through executive order he can legislate morality. Now, I thought the left constantly told us, continually tells us, that you can't legislate morality, and yet that's exactly what the president thinks he's trying to do. Not quite sure I understand how that works. And then lastly, in terms of the broader context of what's going on, this false hope that the president is offering, that somehow, because they're going to take some heretofore undefined action, they're going to affect the well-being of millions of Americans and take thousands of people out of harm's way, assuming they act responsibly. Even if you tallied up all of the horrific and sad and unfortunate instances of gun violence, none of this is going to take thousands of people out of harm's way. And none of this is going to change anything at the underlying root cause of the violence. And the root cause is simply evil. And because we have become such a relativistic society that unfortunately denies that evil exists in some courts, certainly in our Federal Department of Education, because they won't address the root cause of the fact that there is evil, they will never be able to effectively do anything about gun violence. They may control law-abiding citizens and their ability to obtain weapons, You're listening to the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the Conservative Broadcast Media Network. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
I always loved watching the kids play basketball. I still do, even though things have changed. It's funny, they can't find jobs to get their careers started, and I can't afford to retire. And now we're all living together.